Hello and welcome to the Jake and Gino podcast. My name is Gino Barbaro, one of the co-founders of Jake and Gino. And on today's show, we have John Gafford. He's a luxury real estate entrepreneur, speaker, and host of Escaping the Drift, a top 20 business podcast with over 3 million downloads. A former Apprentice contestant and CEO of Simply Vegas, he empowers people to break free from mediocrity, take control of their lives, and lead with purpose. Boy, we need a lot more of that in this world, John. How you doing, brother?
Gino, good morning, man. Good afternoon to where you are, I guess. There you go.
You know, let's hit right upon the book right now. I wish I had a copy of the book with me. It looks like it's right behind you. Where can the listeners get a copy of the book?
Anywhere.
Anywhere. Okay. Escaping the Drift.
Yeah, books available everywhere. Barnes and Noble, Amazon. You can actually pick up a copy of the audiobook, which I recorded, which funny enough was one of the hardest things I've ever had to do in my life. Because I speak so quickly. Having a guy in an engineering booth tell you to slow down for 5 straight days was an interesting experience.
I feel the pain because the same with me. And every time you stop, then you become really self-conscious of every word. Did I say it right? Do I need to go back? It's a really painful thing when you've done it the first time. But 5 days in the booth, brother, wow.
Well, it's funny because I had this, when the publisher told me, they said, we're going to fly you to LA and you're going to record your audiobook. First of all, they made me audition for it. I had to send them like a recorded chapter to read my own book. And then, so I had this thought in my head of like, I'm going to roll into this studio on Sunset Strip and like where Aerosmith recorded, right? There's going to be this giant panel with like dudes smoking and like groupies hanging out. And I'm going to be in a booth with a headset. They'd be looking at me. No. I went to a little place outside of LA. They shoved me in a place the size of a closet. And there was a guy in my ear just saying, stop, back up, slow down, stop, back up, slow down for 4 days. Not quite the magical experience I was looking for.
And writing a book is not magical. Everyone thinks it is, and it's a lot of work. And I'm talking about like real books. I'm not talking about AI generated books. I'm talking about books that have story, books that have trauma in them, because I'm sure you had to go back and relive a lot of this stuff. Honestly, why did you write the book? I mean, what was the real impetus behind writing the book?
Well, a couple of things. Number one, I wanted to have some legacy for my kids in case something happened to me. I wanted to have something for them. But also, when you reach a certain level of success, you start to look back and I started getting, I host a podcast the same way you do. And there's questions that you ask that are pretty normal. And one of the questions that we always ask is, or I do is, like if you could go back and change anything, what would you change? And most of the high level people I talk to always kind of give the same answer, which is I wouldn't change anything because, all the struggle and all the strife and everything has gotten me to where I am now. And I'm thinking, well, that's not me, because I would go back and smack myself in the head because I didn't really have any great success until I was probably in my early 30s. Because, I had a lot of cool jobs when I was in my 20s and I did a lot of cool stuff, but nothing that made me money or built me wealth and gave me any sense of security. And everything that I was doing at that time of my life was at the will of others. My entire life, I was an employee, so my schedule was at the will of others. Ultimately, my employment was at the will of others. If something changed in the business and they needed to save money, or I was normally towards the end of that, the highest line item on some of those P&Ls, so I was the first thing to go. And if I could go back, to myself then and just say, look, this is what you should do, I think where would I be now? But also, if you look at what's going on in the world that we live in today, with the advent of, like you just said, AI, and the speed at which jobs that once were, I watched an article, I was watching a video last night, they were talking about jobs because I have a kid getting ready to go to college. And they were talking about degrees that return right now. And the tried and true for the last 20 years has been computer science. Like that has been, if you go computer science, you'll be fine. And now that is the return on investment for a computer science degree is falling off a cliff, because AI is replacing those jobs. So for me, the timing of this book, and of course, when I started writing this, we didn't have AI. I wish I would have, it would have gone a lot faster. But when we started this, we didn't have this. So the fact that it came out 3 years later into the teeth of this, if you're somebody that's listening to this, that you have a job that you show up for every day. You probably want to check out a copy of this because you need to take control of your life. Because if your life is at the will of others, and especially now the robots, you're probably going to have a problem coming down the pike. And if you don't pivot and you don't do that quickly enough, you're going to run into a roadblock you're not going to like.
What is the drift?
So the story goes, many years ago, you mentioned in my intro, I was a contestant on season 3 of The Apprentice, and yes, I realize now talking about that is kind of like talking about how many touchdowns you scored in high school, which was 0 for me, by the way. Donut, big fat 0 for me, but it's relevant to the story. And Mark Burnett, who was the producer of that show, one day we were having a task, and we were out in front of Shrimp International. Oddly enough, I literally told this story to my kids, as I said, that right there is where this happened when I was in New York last week. And it was one of those days on production when everything was going wrong, right? Like the boom cranes were goofy and like people running around, nothing was working right. And you could just tell the crew was really, really stressed because Mark was there that day, Burnett, who's executive producer, and nothing was going right. Well, a girl named Kristen Kirchner, who was another contestant on the show, back then we were all kids, so I can call her girl, thought it was a good idea to needle Mark Burnett at this moment. So she looked at him and she goes, "Hey, you're treading water today, aren't you, Mark?" And he just turned around and shot her a look like a death stare right through her. And he goes, "I never tread water. I swim. You drift." And he walked off. And I was like, "Ooh," wrote that one down. Because to me, that kind of encapsulated. There's two kinds of people in this world, right? There are people that drift along with the currents of life. The drift is life, man. It's going to move you whether you want to be moved or not. Nothing stops. There's no such thing as a complete stop of motion. If you stop taking action and you stop setting a course, well, the world is still going to guide you somewhere. Like my friend Erwin McManus said when we were discussing this at one point. I love Erwin. Erwin said, "I love this concept of the drift because the problem with drifting is it's still motion. So you still feel movement in your life. You still feel like things are happening. But if you're not plotting the course, you're going to wake up, turn around one day and realize you are lost." So to me, that's what the drift is. The second type of people are like Mark, are people that swim, people that set a dedicated course. Everything they do is they understand is 100% within their control. And they are making those choices to get.
How does the young Johnny G though plot the course? I mean, like you're drifting out there, and it's how you realize that you have an awareness. Most people are unconscious. They've actually been, I've become a certified money coach over the last 6 months, and I've really come to truly understand and really acknowledge that most of the behaviors, beliefs, patterns that we have around money as adults come from our youth. And once we are aware of that, we can do one of two things. Like you said, we can continue to drift along, or we can continue to say, "Wow, I've got 700 grand in the bank. Why do I freak out every time I get a $10 bill?" Well, maybe it's because I was poor when I was 12 years old and I'm still acting like that. But I have to be conscious and aware of that. I have to say, I want to stop drifting and start swimming. So how do you, I guess, get that shift to go from one to the other?
Well, it's so funny that you talk about that because I've been like super into like the whole young shadow self thing right now. And you can Google that's for a whole other day of trying to figure out like what in your shadow persona drives your your thinking
Mm-hmm.
in your forward persona. And I think a good judge is this, right? A good judge of this is there was a doctor, I think it was Wade Gary was his name, I think. I don't know. He used to talk about an orange, right? And he would say, "Listen, if you have an orange and you squeeze that orange, what comes out of it?" And people are like, "Orange juice comes out of it." He's like, "Cool." He's like, "Okay, if you squeeze, can I squeeze this orange in any way and make apple juice come out of it?" And they're like, "No." "Can I make pineapple juice come out?" "No." It's like the reason I can't make anything but orange juice come out of this orange is because that's what's inside of it. So the question is, life is going to squeeze you at some point. It's going to squeeze you. What comes out of you when you get squeezed? And if the answer to that question is fear, is anger, is vengeance, is misery, is depression, then that's what's inside of you. And that might be time to like analyze. Don't analyze how you feel when things are good. The real truth of the matter is how you feel when things are bad. And so I would say start there, but also the quickest way to change how you view the world is to change who you are around. For me, people ask, like, what did I get out of The Apprentice? What was the best thing? That was the first time that I was ever around 18 other people in that close of circle for that amount of time that were just getting it in life. I mean, absolutely just after it. And you start to think, and I think if you're of a certain intelligence, I think dumb people can't figure this out, but if you're of a certain intelligence, when you walk into a room, you kind of, after talking to people in the room, you kind of figure out where you rank in that room. Like, okay, I'm one of the smarter people here, or I'm one of the dumber people here. You kind of know. Yeah. If you're super dumb, you have no idea, right? You just think you're fine, right? So if you walk into a room and you just feel like you're the smartest person every time, you're probably not that smart. But anyway, I realized pretty quick in this room of 18 people that I was one of the smartest people there. However, if you looked at our balance sheets at the time, because I might have hustled my way onto the show a little bit, but if you looked at our balance sheets, I was one of probably the least successful financial people there. So here I am. I'm like, well, wait a second. There's this disparity between what I perceive as my own ability and the results that I'm actually getting. So what's causing that? And then you start looking at it. And really, my book starts with this. You've got to take radical honesty within yourself. So many people, we've become this absolute society of pointing the finger instead of pulling the thumb. Everybody wants to say, the reason, I'm not succeeding is because of this external force. And I'll tell you a story of why when you write a book and you use a publisher, there's this place. I don't remember the name of it off the top of my head, but there's this business that gives the book a review. And the reason they give a review is not really for the readers, it's for the book buyers, like the Barnes and Nobles of the world, to read these reviews of book to see how many of them are going to buy. And I got a review from them to this company, and my publisher called me and said, we got a review back from this place, and there's some good, is what he said. I said, okay, well, what does that mean? And I read the review, and there was some good, saying there was, talking about my battles, with seasonal depression and some of those things, how I dealt with my kids. There's some earnest things and how they liked how I came off. But then at the end of it, it said, this was the last line. And it said, it says, Gafford's advice can occasionally come off as trite because he doesn't acknowledge the myriad systematic issues and presents every problem as solvable. Well, I read that and I was mad. I got a bad review and I went to bed. And I woke up the next morning and I read it again. And I realized something. Number one, this is one sole person's lens looking at my book. One human being sitting in an office in New York that read this book, and this is their lens. And the fact that they gave me a bad review because I present all problems as solvable, that's a win for me. Like you're damn right, I absolutely do. And the reason I do is because, much like yourself on this podcast, how many people have sat on the other side of the screen or in your studio in front of you that have wild tales of success that they have no business being anywhere near? None. I got off a boat from Vietnam at 21, couldn't speak English, and now I own 300 doors. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? It just doesn't make any sense. So yeah, I present all problems as solvable. And what that means, if you're going to buy into that philosophy, if you're really going to buy into that, that means something very painful for a lot of people. That means that a lot of your problems, a lot of your trauma, a lot of the lens and how you view the world is based on you. It's based on yourself. And you've got to take radical accountability for your participation in how you got to where. Mm-hmm. And that's painful for a lot of people. A lot of people, like for example, my car got repoed. This is a hypothetical. My car got repoed because the car company are jerks, whatever else. Man, they sold me a crappy car that broke down. The payment was so high, I couldn't afford to fix it. And now it's getting repoed. The company sucks. And that's a scenario that I actually had when I was about 23, probably. I think that actually happened to me. And that's how I thought at the time. When the reality is, maybe rather instead of going to buy a car because I ruined my credit like it was an Olympic sport, maybe instead of just rushing to buy a car at a 23 or 24% interest, that was a beater from like a buy here, pay here place, maybe take a year and fix my credit. Because like when I actually got around to fixing my credit, it wasn't that hard to do, and I had it fixed in like a year.
Mm-hmm.
But that took the responsibility of me actually fixing that and not letting it be somebody else's problem.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're not willing to be radically honest with you and what you did to put yourself in a situation, that's where it all starts.
I have so many rabbit holes that I want to go down, but
Yeah.
you can take that analogy into student debt as well today. Well, I want somebody else to pay for my student debt. Well, I was the responsible one who paid for my kids' college, so we didn't have to go into student debt. So why should you get bailed out for the choices that you made? Very unpopular opinion, but that's just the reality. They don't have any kind of radical accountability, and I did with my family. But this is something that's really important because I'm a parent. I've got 6 kids. What you said really struck and a chord in me because this is one of the failings that I think we have in society right now, where we're trying to create safe spaces. We can't insult anybody. We can't offend anybody. What about if life doesn't squeeze you? We're not allowing our kids to get squeezed right now because we're trying to keep them safe. And that's a noble thing. As parents, we want to keep our kids safe. We don't want them to go through the struggles that we went through. So how do we balance that out? And how do we let our kids go through those trials and tribulations and have themselves get squeezed at certain times in life?
No, I agree. I think we're going to have a whole generation of low self-esteem humans. And the reason that is because you build self-esteem through struggle and accomplishment, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's like, for example, my son, who hasn't, he was a lacrosse player, hurt he had bad ankles, had to medically DQ from that, and hasn't really worked out in the last year and a half, right? And so he's getting ready to go to college next year. I'm like, bro, you got to get back. You got to start working out again. And he thought, he's like, well, I'm not playing sports. Why don't I need to work out? I'm like, it has nothing to do with that. It has to do with making a promise to yourself that you are keeping daily, that even when you don't want to do it, you still have to do it because that's the agreement you've made with yourself. And that's what builds self-confidence. I think if you're a parent and your kid is out there, you've got to let them solve their problems themselves. When my kids, it's like tennis, right? When my kids bring me a problem, I always hit it back over the net. Hey, this is screwed up. I don't know what to do. What do you think you should do? Whack. Here comes the problem, right back over the net with topspin. What do you think you should do? Well, this and that. There's a chapter in the book where I talk about with my kids and how I raise my kids a lot in the book, because I think that's the best example of how you do this. Some people didn't have the best parents in the world that helped them along. So I think a lot of my parenting stories do this. But for example, part of this is people, especially people in that situation that have never had to fix their own problems, they don't realize what's possible without asking. For example, my son, at one point, my kid's valedictorian of his school. He's a very bright kid, 35 ACT, applying to all the Ivies right now. So very bright kid. But at one point when he was in probably 9th grade, he had a reading assignment that he was supposed to do. He didn't get the book, and it was the night before. And he's like, this is going to be part of my grade. I'm going to get a B. I don't know what to do. And I said, have you emailed the teacher? That won't work. How do you know it won't work? I just won't work. Why don't you craft an email and just see if it'll work? Because what's the upside? What's the downside here? This is about risk evaluation, and this is something that people don't understand how to do. What's the downside? And that's how I said to him, what's the downside of the situation? Well, are you screwed? Here's the question. Are you screwed right now? Yes, I'm screwed right now. If this doesn't work, are you still screwed? Yes. Okay, so there's no worse downside. You're already starting at 0. What's the upside? The upside is my problem gets fixed and you hold your A. Sent the teacher an email. Teacher actually came back and said, look, I know you already read way above this assignment anyway. Don't even worry about it. We'll just check it as done. But he wouldn't have done that if he wouldn't have tried to do it, because there's always a way out. Problems have got to be viewed as something that's solvable. And if they're not viewed as solvable, there is no way out. There's always a way out. Let your kids find it. Let your kids find it.
Smart people know the answers to all the questions. Wise people like John know which questions to ask. And I think that's the differentiator between people who have a little bit of experience and people who grew up to be wise and be able to, maybe a young John didn't have that. But what's important is if you are a parent, you need to lead your children like that. You can't answer all of their questions. You need to ask them the right question to be able to probe and to be able to make them think. Because remember, their frontal lobe ain't developed until they're about 25 or
No.
26 years old. So they're acting like idiots to begin with, and it's not their fault. It's just that you're there to guide them and to actually help them form their thoughts and to help them critically think about solving these problems and being there. And every now and again, you may need to step in and say, hey, Mike, maybe it's not a good idea to spend $1,800 on an amp. Maybe let's keep that money aside. And when a deal comes through, you can invest in my deal. That's sometimes when you need to step in and be the adult. And there's certain situations when you may need to do that. But there are certain situations when you need your children to fail or at least let them ask. And these empowering questions are so important. And that's part of the way when you read the book, Escaping the Drift, you're helping your kids to escape the drift by not just sitting there and drifting, but actually starting to swim because they're starting to think critically. And if you allow your children to do that and you give them that skill, I don't care what school they went to. I don't care how much AI takes over. They're going to be really, really well and really successful in their own right.
Well, I think what you just said, and I talk about this extensively in the book too, is understanding the unwritten rules of life. The reason that so many people wound up on the hamster wheel and they don't succeed and they start just spinning is because they don't understand the rules of the game that they are playing. They're not gamifying. They're not really looking at the situation for what it is. They're just taking everything at face value. For example, everybody out there is a college student. I'm going to tell you real quick how to never get anything less than an A on a subjective paper. Here's the secret. You ready? This is all you have to. My sister told me this, and this is about seeing the world for what it is, not for what it is. Now, if I told you, right, Gino, here we go. We're going to have this course, and I told you that you're going to have to turn in 4 written papers. They're going to be graded on content by me or my PA. We're going to be graded 4 of those, and it's going to be 75% of your grade over the course of the semester. Now, you hear that, and most people would hear that and think, I've got to write really good papers, right? I've got to make sure that my papers are really good to get 75. When what you should have heard in that story is the professor has to give me an A.
Yes.
Now, how I get to, I don't care about the process of how I get to there. That is the ultimate, that is the only goal. So my sister taught me this when I went to college, and it was very effective. Anytime you have anything that's subjective, and there's going to be multiple times over the course of a semester, the first thing you turn in, if you get anything less than an A, all professors have office hours. They all have times when you can go in and see them, right? After class in their office hours. You walk in 5 minutes early to the office hours with whatever grade that you just got, B minus, whatever it is. If it's a D, you're screwed. But if it's like a B, you're fine. You walk in and you say, hey, I'm really sorry. Can you explain to me why I got a B and I didn't get an A? And you let them explain it, and they'll go through it. Chances are, depending on the school you're at, they didn't even read it. One of their people did. But they go through it and they look at it and they go, well, this probably maybe some structure and this and that, blah, blah, blah. And, yeah, this is why you did it. And after that happens, you look at them and go, yeah, I'm sorry. I don't get it. Could you explain it again? And you burn their entire hour or whatever it is and try to make them stay later than they're willing to stay. Just absolutely don't understand it. Stay as long as you humanly possibly can. And then at the end of that, you say, I'm really glad you took this time with me. I'm grateful to know that if this ever happens again, I can always come back and we can do this again. It's awesome. Right? That teacher has a family. They have shit to do. They have things they don't want to talk to you for an hour and a half again. And I guarantee you, if your paper is between a B minus and an A, they're going to think, this kid's going to come back in here. I can't do this again with this kid. And they're going to give you the A. That's just one tiny example of people want to just see the rules for what they are instead of focusing on the best and fastest way to get to the end result.
So you always have to think about what the end result is. That's
yes,
you're always
and
trying to think about what your goals are. They're your objectives. How do you get to them? There's a system or a process to be able to get to them, and that process works really well when you're dealing with college professors. I like that.
I'll tell you another story, right? And that's another Apprentice story. But Brian McDowell that was on the show with me. He's a little gruff guy that fired himself from New Jersey, like 4 feet tall, little meatball dude. And we had been fired already, so we were still in New York, just kind of hanging out, which is what you had to do. And he's like, "I got to go watch the Preakness or whatever race it was, the Triple Crown, the third race in the Triple Crown." And he said, "I got to go watch it." There was a horse named Smarty Jones running at the time that had won the Belmont and won the Kentucky Derby, and this last race was going to be the Triple Crown. He's like, "I got to watch this race. I got to watch this race." And I said, "You're into horse racing?" He goes, "No, not at all." And I said, "Well, why do you got to watch this race?" He goes, "I bought 2,000." He goes, "I bought 1,000 $2 win tickets for the first race. I bought 1,000 $2 win tickets for the second race, and I bought 1,000 $2 win tickets for this race." And I was like, "All right, this dude's gambling. I'll go watch it with you." So went and watched, and the horse lost, and this dude lost his mind. I mean, lost his mind. And I'm thinking to myself, I'm like, you won two of these bets, you lost one. Who cares, right? I'm thinking, you're up, dude. Be happy, right? I mean, it's just, who cares? And he looks at me and he says, "I don't care about the money." He goes, it wasn't for the bets. He goes, "I was going to take those win tickets and I was going to frame all three of them. I was going to license a picture of the horse and I was going to sell that shit for $500 a pop on QVC." And I was like, "What?" Like, here's this dude that has no business being anywhere near this elite horse race, but had figured out a hustle to insert himself into the highest dollar sporting event on earth and figured it out. And it was this close to pulling it off. And it was just like, man, that's when I was like, you got to start seeing the world a little differently than you see it. That was one of those lessons.
I love that. So let's go down that thread because I think you're in that room. You said you were smarter than everybody else. But what are some of the qualities that people had in that room to get into that room? And what are some of the things that you, I guess, maybe lacked at the time? But it sounds like that dude, I want to say he maybe want to call it an entrepreneurial mindset, maybe a visionary, maybe thinking outside the box. Maybe there's no box. And he's like, this is the paradigm that most people look at. I'm going to take a step out. I'm not into this conventional wisdom kind of nonsense that most people are. But what gets you into that room? What qualities do those people have to be able to get into that?
Well, okay. So for that particular thing, for the Apprentice, it was two things. Number one, they wanted people that were successful, but they were also casting a show. I think the best way I can tell you that is tell you how I got on the show. The best way I can answer this, which is we went to an open call in Jacksonville, and my sister wanted to go. I didn't even want to go. She begged me to go, and they started doing the open call, and then they just start whittling it down. They started calling me back, and then they started sending me applications that were like this thick and filling them out, and then they kept calling and can you send us a video of yourself, and kept going. And then they, somewhere along the lines, they told us the process was, well, here's what we do. We started with 2 million people and we whittle it down to 50. And we take the top 50 people based on their business acumen and we take them to LA and for a week for finals week. And so I started thinking, well, cool. If I, now my competitive juices get flowing a little bit. And I think if I can just get to finals week, great, right? So I get to finals week. And they fly us to LA and they say, here's the deal. This week, you're going to be in a hotel room by yourself for about 4 days. So you're not going to leave the room because the first time they want you to meet is to be on camera. You can't leave your room unless we come and get you. And we'll come and get you for it was like being in prison. Like you get a gym break, we'll take you to dinner and all this. And it was funny. You would go to, it was the Embassy Suites in Santa Monica. And you would go to the dinner and there would be like 51 tops because all the contestants were in there, but you couldn't talk to anybody. And then you would go into rooms and they would give you these IQ tests and psychological tests and all these things. And I started noticing the room getting smaller. Right? You go to dinner and it's like, there's not 50 people here. And I'm like, they're sending people home. So by the last couple of days, we're down to probably 30. And I was like, okay, 20 people are gone. Here we are with 30. And then they say, okay, today's the day Burnett's coming in. All right, cool. First time I ever saw him. I put on my best suit. They go, it's your time. So I walk upstairs with the production assistant, and we go in, and it's all the NBC brass, about 15 people sitting behind Mark in one of those double door kind of conference room suites. I walk in, he's sitting there and he's eating M&Ms. And I walk in, I go, how you doing, Mr. Burnett? My name's John Gafford. I stick my hand out. And he looks at my hand and he puts an M&M in my hand. And I was like, okay. And I start just launching into a tirade of all my accomplishments and why I would be, this perfect employee for Trump and all the stuff and blah, blah, blah. Maybe it probably embellished a little bit. He didn't care. he asked me a question about, he heard my girlfriend was going to dump me and just asked me weird questions like this. And, I have a pretty high EQ, and I just could feel the room slipping away. I knew this was going terribly. I could see them, like, executives starting to check their phones. It's just like, shit. So I walk out, I go downstairs, I start packing my stuff because I know what's coming. I've been seeing it all week. I'm packing my stuff up, and it's good. And the PA comes down a little bit later and he goes, "Hey, they want to see you again." I'm like, "Really?" He goes, "Yeah." I said, "All right, hang on a second. I'm going to do this a little differently." So I go to the mini bar. I said, "I got to hit the mini bar first." I crash the mini bar, go back up the elevator, see the double doors. Wham! I kick the doors as hard as I can. They open. Bam! Hit the wall. Everybody jumps and turn around. I walk in, I look at Burnett, and I said, "Hey, buddy, let me tell you something. The reason you should put me on your little television show is because when you invest in me, you get back 100 times what you invest." And I pulled a bag of M&Ms that I'd taken out of the minibar, I threw them in his face, and I walked out. And that's how I got on the show. And so, yeah. And so to answer your question, if you break that scenario down, and all of this again is in the book, you talk about risk evaluation. What was my risk of doing that? Zero. I was already cooked, so I could go make one balls out M&M moment and maybe impress them. Two was I had assumed when I walked into that room, and this is something I never do, I'd assumed that I knew what they were looking for, that I knew what they wanted. Rather than let the meeting come to me, I tried to go into the meeting because I walked in to apply for a job. They were not hiring. They were casting for a television show. So they needed people that had the potential to make ratings. Just like Mr. Meatball with the horse race. Why does this little gruff guy from Jersey get on? Because he was a lunatic and he was going to he had success in some crazy things, but ultimately he was going to make some television, and he did. He absolutely did. So that's what they were looking for. People with, I think, balls, panache, could make good television, but also had success.
So this is excellent example of when you're in real estate, understanding not what's in it for me, but really listening to the other side. That's the skill of a negotiation. It's exactly what you laid out. You're going into a deal thinking that the seller wants the highest price. Well, is that you're just assuming, or did you get that from the horse's mouth? And that's where people make so many mistakes. You call it emotional intelligence. I think it has a lot to do with it, but that's also experience, where you're going in and you're just really listening to, listen, I hear you want this price, but what's going on? And actually having the humility and not the pride or the ego to go in and say, I know what you want. I know what's best for you. You need to ask the prospect what's best for them and how you can solve their problem. Once you shift that mindset and you're into solving problems and you're trying to create an ultimate, I don't want to call it a win-win because everyone uses that generically, but it really is. You're really trying to create a win for them, and then you're trying to create a win for you. And if you can't do that, even if you do win against them, ultimately you're not going to get repeat business because they're going to feel as if they're slighted. They're going to feel as if they've lost, and it's going to be a lot harder. So taking that analogy of what you're talking about, it's such an important skill to teach our kids and to teach leaders, is you really need to sit there and really listen and really be open-minded and not have any judgments. It's so important. And I think curiosity is the currency of learning. If you're curious and you really want to learn and really want to know what's going on, cast aside all doubts, get out of the bubble, as we like to say, and really listen as to what's going on.
I'll give you a real estate story on that exact line that happened literally yesterday. So first of all, a little more color than me, other than failed reality show contestant, is in that time, in the last 19 years, you've mentioned it in your opening, we own a company called Simply Vegas. We're the largest luxury real estate brokerage here in Las Vegas, have been for 15 years. We've got 585 agents that work for us. We have the highest average sales price. We sell more homes over $1 million. $2 billion in annual sales regularly. We're a completely vertically integrated company. We own our own mortgage company. We own our own title and escrow. We also do JV title and escrow and mortgage companies for other large brands across the country. So we built a nice conglomerate of businesses that do this, but I still every day am in the real estate side of things with residential, especially on the luxury side. I get a call yesterday. I got an email, rather, not a call. I got an email yesterday morning from one of our agents who is literally running his business from Russia. He's in Russia and he's running his business here. And he says, hey, and he has an agent that kind of does his legwork here, but he's the one that's the brains of the operation. He says, hey, I might have bitten off more than I can chew with this listing. This guy's not happy. Can you step in? Will you mind stepping in and just kind of taking it? I just want to take like a small referral and I'm good. At which point, when I hear that, I always think, okay, nobody hands off gold. They hand off problems, right?
Yes.
Nobody gives away the gold. They're like, here's my problem. Please take it. So I said, okay, before I say yes, I need to meet with the guy. I need to go. So he has told this guy that his house should list for $4.2 million is what it should list for. Now keep in mind, he's not been in it. 4.2 million is what he says it should list for. I go over there and the house is, number one, it's got some cool bones. It's on an acre, which is an anomaly for here in Vegas. It's kind of tucked up right into the edge of the desert where a lot of people like sand rails and off-road bikes and that stuff like to kind of live. And this place has all the garage space. It has a giant workshop with a lift. It's got, you could park a 60-foot boat there. He's got a 60-foot RV park there. It's all kinds of stuff, right? Huge deal. And it's a nice house, but it's super Tuscan. And like, nobody's looking for Tuscan at all, right? So I spent the first 30 minutes with this guy, just like, what do you want to do? Like what are we trying to accomplish? What are we trying to get there? And I wanted his story, and I wanted to really hear his side of where we got to where we got it. But the most important thing I wanted to know was where this number of $4.2 million came from. That's what I want to know. Like, is this your number or is this his number? Because if it's his number, I can't help him. So through the course of the conversation, he's just like, look, I want to get as much as we can get, but I also don't want it to sit. Okay. Well, what would you be happy? What would be kind of the bare minimum that you'd be okay with? And he came back with a number that was very different from 4.2 and somewhat almost reasonable. And it's funny, but as he was telling me the story, he said, well, your guy, he goes, and this is real estate agents, listen to this specifically, because this came right out of his mouth, not mine. He goes, well, he added it. He said he would take it for 4.2 million, but if it sold for less than 3.8, he would reduce the commission to 2%. And then the client said, that was a red flag for me. And I was like, listen to that, right? Here's a client saying that this dude's saying he was saving money, but he's like, that's him saying he already didn't believe in it and he was already discounting to try to get the deal. Because I told him, I said, I don't discount what I do. When we take a listing, we charge what we charge, and that's how it is. And it's fine. And we went from 4.2 to 3.4, and I think the house will trade at like 3.2.
That's incredible, isn't it?
And that was just a matter of listening to him. And once I really listened to him and got his story and understood what he was trying to do and understand why he was upset, and then answering his question properly. And then he said to me at one point, he said, he asked, who do you think the buyer is for the house? And I instantly, because of where this house is, there's a very large Mormon church there. And I said, it's going to be a large Mormon family because you got all this killer land for a huge family. Like, I'm going to geofence that church. And that they're all going to get your listing, whether they're looking or not. And he goes, yeah, it's really funny because, your other guy said it would be somebody from California. And I said, look, we sell houses to millionaires coming in from California every single day, and they just want to be on a golf course and be done with it. They don't want to deal with all of it. Like, not one of them knows anything about the lake or what a sand rail is or that's not who they are. They want to buy in the nice country clubs, be behind the gate, play golf, and be done, and be there for 3 months to save their taxes. And that's what they want to do. So, but it's just a matter of not listening and not really getting into what the client wants to do. People are so quick to want to hang their hat on stuff, and especially in real estate. It's I hate to say it, but one of the things that I always tell our people is the number one thing in real estate you can count on is the mediocrity of your competition. You just absolutely can count on it. It's way too easy to get a real estate license. It's too easy to keep a real estate license. The barrier of entry is ridiculously low. And to have a level of skill takes time and takes effort. And most people that get in this business don't want to spend that time. What I've found over the years in this is kind of a little bit of a sideways gig, but one of the worst things I ever heard is somebody that owns a real estate brokerage. And I heard somebody say this once, maybe 10 years ago. I was talking to a guy that had a quote unquote mega team at another company. And he said to me, he goes, well, I said, man, you have like 190 agents. Like my company, I have no brand new agent training program. It does not exist. We only hire experienced people. Or if you want to come work at our place, you've got to be on a team of one of our successful people. Because to me, that's the only way to learn this game. The only way. And so I said, dude, you bring on all these newbies. What are you doing? And he said to me, he goes, I found that the reason that people get a real estate license is most cases they have one deal ready to go. Their sister, their aunt, their mom, their cousin, somebody wants to buy a house, which is what's driving them to get this license. And if I can just get 50 or 60% of that first deal, I don't really care what happens after that. And I thought, oh my God.
That's horrible.
It's terrible. It's terrible. It's
Yeah.
terrible.
So it's interesting. We're going to go take a break, but I need to make this point. I think part of the problem with society now is they need to work hard. We're all about this work smarter and you need to work hard if you're going to become a real estate agent. There's a lot of follow-up, there's a lot of tech going on, a lot of things that can help you, but you still need to ask those questions. And it could be tiring for you to get on a call and talk to somebody for 30 minutes or 45 minutes. You need to do that 4 or 5 times a day. But man, if you can save a deal and you're making 3% on a $3 million transaction, you just made 90 grand for a 30-minute conversation. I'm just saying that's how I think you have to start looking at these problems. Is you need to work a little bit harder than everybody else. And if you can do that, and you have the skills, because you can learn the sales techniques, you can learn the closing, but really, if you're genuinely curious and you really want to solve their problem, and I think part of it, you really have to be passionate about it. You don't have to love real estate, but I think you have to love the idea of putting somebody in a really cool house and having somebody create memories for the next 10 years. I think that's part of it. I think you have to love customer service and being able to solve problems. That's part of real estate also. If you don't like that, then don't get into real estate. Find something else.
It's like a chef that doesn't like to prep. If you don't want to be at dial the phone, don't get in real estate, because, and like you just said, all of these advancements, AI outbound callings, AI text, all of this stuff, dude, look what TCP did for automated texting. It nuked it. Right now, people just write stop, and you can't even contact that person again.
Yes.
So as somebody that intimately runs KPIs, I'm spending every month, and this is not for my brokerage. Like, I have a team of 12 that work just for me, that handle my personal stuff. Because I don't, like yesterday going out to see that guy, as much as I wish I could say I do that a lot, I don't. I send normally my people, but because this was one of our other people handing it to me, I felt I needed to personally deal with it. But normally I would have just handed that off. But I spend, just for my personal team of 10, I think I spend probably $25,000 a month in marketing. So we're hyper aware of lead, all of our KPIs. We're very intimately involved with those, because I'm constantly watching lead costs, lead per acquisition, number of dials. I mean, I know exactly how many dials based on the market flow it takes my agents to earn what they want to make. Because the problem with people in real estate is they never adjust the effort level. The effort level always stays the same, right? Like, look at people, the average real estate agent makes like 60 grand, I think is what it is. Or maybe it's less than that. I don't even know. Maybe it's less. But my thing is, like, look at it, like, there's agents that were making 60 grand 15 years ago, when in Vegas, the average home price was 200,000.
Yeah.
Well, now the average home price here is 485,000. So if you were doing the same amount of work, how are you making 60 grand still? And it's because they're not focused on the effort. They're focused on the dollars they need to get by. Like you said at the beginning, you were talking about at the beginning of it, why do I freak out when I get a $10 bill when I have $700,000 in the bank? Because $700,000 is your zero. That's your I'm broke number. That's your holy shit number. Do you know what most people's broke number is? It's zero or negative. Like, they don't freak out until the ATM card says, yeah, not this time, dude. Can't help you. I can't help you.
Let's take a quick time out to hear from our sponsor. I want to take you back to your first real estate deal, and you closed that deal, and now you're here today. You're $2 billion plus. You're vertically integrated. Give me some idea. Give the listeners an idea of how you're able to scale up. Some of the things that really stood out. I mean, for us, it was our cadence of accountability, our rhythms that we put in place. You talked about KPIs. If you can't measure it, you can't manage it. Our core values, our mission statement, all of that really allowed us to go from 30 units in, multifamily to over, 1,900 units inbound. All of that really helped us out. you're in a different business, although business is business. I'd love to really pick your brains and say, hey, this really helped me really solidify, launch my career, and be able to become vertically integrated and really scale the operations of the business that I have.
Well, what I can tell you is, and it doesn't matter the business. Anybody that I know that has amazing success in business has three things in common. Number one, which is absolute clarity of vision. They know exactly where they want to go. They have, it is written. It is not an idea. For me, I take it so far as to plug it into ChatGPT and I generate images of my future life that I look at in the gym, in my bath. They're everywhere I look, right? That is the life I'm trying to commit. I'm trying to get to. Then they have a succinct plan. I don't, there is a time and a place for a 32-page business plan with an executive summary, and it's called when you're going to a bank. It is not how you run your business every day. Your business plan, and I teach this in my book, should be succinct. I do 1 page, and to accomplish any goal in any business, no more than 3 strategies, right? So here's where I'm trying to get to. Here's my 3 strategies that are going to get me there. And all of those, each one of those strategies should be able to survive on its own, right? Meaning, like, if my goal is to make $1 million a year, strategy 1 will make me $1 million. Strategy 2 will make me $1 million. Strategy 3 should make me $1 million. So if I just execute all 3, there's very little chance I'm not going to hit my goal. And then the third thing people have is absolutely relentless execution of those processes, of having complete and total dedication to what they're doing. And this is where most people fall off, especially in real estate. And here's why. I'm going to tell another story real quick that's also in the book where I talk about this. At one point, we owned a very successful insurance company in Florida. This is after The Apprentice. This is something that we kind of fell into. It was a real, it encapsulated all of the things we talked about. It was a really good hustle. And by hustle, I mean, we saw the game a different way than anybody else had seen. And we had a way that we could create tremendous value for old people in Florida by getting all of their medicine for free, right? This is before Medicare Part D. We had this down and we could get any medicine for free for any old person, bar none. So we would just go into their house and say, listen, you're paying $200 a month for your insurance and $700 a month for your drugs. If you pull your insurance with us it's going to go up a little bit now because you're older. So if you pay $240 a month for your insurance, we'll get all your medicine for free. Well, that was life-changing savings for the client.
Yeah.
We were knocking them down. We were crushing, right? And so the company was building very, very quickly. My best sales guy was in Tampa, Florida at the time. And, here we are, we're paying for leads. We're getting the stuff. And I find that this guy is like, even though he's my best guy, he was like blowing off leads to go play golf because somebody would call and say, let's play golf. So he would go play golf. He was staying out too late, maybe partying in South Tampa a little bit too much and, missing appointments and not making calls and not doing what they're doing. So here I am, the CEO. And even though I know this guy is great, I don't have any choice but what I can do with him, which is what? What do I have to do?
Ask him.
I got to ask him, right? The problem was the CEO was me. The marketing director was me. The salesman was me. The whole company was me. So what I decided, I can't fire myself. So what I decided was I've got to get some middle management in my business. And if you're somebody out there that is a solopreneur, which so many people are, and I think people are listening to this, you've got to get middle management. What that became for me was right here in my hand. It's my phone. It became, if it goes in my phone as an appointment, unless I'm absolutely dying, I do not miss it. My time blocking is everything. When I time block the schedule for calls, I treat that like it is an appointment with the president. I'm like, if somebody wants an appointment for something else, I will schedule around that because that's got to happen. And so having that relentless dedication to execution is why you're able to do that. Now, with us at Simply Vegas, if you look, when we started out in the real estate industry, what made us different, better, faster was number one, we really started our company it was all about the agents. I had owned 2 Keller Williams franchises that, man, what a tough business that was. When you make money, you get to give half of it away. When you lose money, you write a check. Great business, right?
Sounds like you're dealing with the government.
Oof, it was, man. And it was like class of Wednesday, welcome aboard, right? It was newbie. And I just, we sat down with my now partner, now 16 years ago, and said, if we were going to build a company, what would we do? If we're an agent, where do we want to work? And it was like, we want to work at a luxury focused place that runs like a private club. And That's what we built, essentially. Not everybody gets to work for us. I'm the only brokerage in Vegas that lets people go. We call it the purge. I mean, we don't play a horn and kill people or anything, but every 6 months we pull all the production. And if you're a zero, we have a conversation, and that conversation goes one of two ways. It either goes, man, nothing I'm doing is working. I'm trying my ass off. I don't know what's going on. And if that's the conversation, I got you. Like I'm all in with you. Let's get you on a team. Let's get you a lead source. Let's figure out what's broken. But as is the case with Vegas, a lot, you get, well, I took a job at MGM. Okay, cool. Let me invite you to work somewhere else, because I don't think this is a business you can dabble at. I think this is what you do, or it's not. It's not a part-time gig. And so having those standards and setting those standards for everybody and understanding that it meant something to work with us. It means something to carry our business. And the best part about it is that by itself has been enough. And what I mean by that is companies come in and they start promising people the world. If you come here, blah, 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 business is going to go to here because of blah, blah. I don't ever promise anybody anything like that, ever. Because what I tell them is the power to change your business is 100% within you wherever you are. My job is to give you an environment that fosters that. What you choose to do in that environment is on you. I'm not promising you anything. I'm not telling you if you come here, it's going to do anything. I'm going to say we have the best tech stack, which we do because I am relentless with making sure. We have pivoted at great expense out of contracts before just because something better came along, just to make sure that they have the best tech stack. And much like being around those 18 people on The Apprentice for that first time, man, and getting around people that are really doing it, I'm going to put you around the best in the business. And that in itself is going to help you. And that's all we do.
There's one word that encapsulates everything you said. It's culture. You've built culture within your organization, and you set standards within your organization, and culture starts at the top. And it's not this marketing slogan where you're just going to, no, you have to live the culture every day. And listening to your employees, hey, I'm really trying. Let's go. Oh, you got something else? Fine. I think having that patience is really cool. Let me ask you, what are you working on right now that you're excited? Any new projects, anything going on right now?
Well, I'll be honest with you. I'm in chapter 15 of my book right now. I'm living it. I'm going to tell you a story, and I talked about my young stuff earlier, which is this. I'm kind of living my book right now. And what I mean by that is this. So the launch came out. We did the launch October 15th, and I had never done this before. I've never written a book before. I didn't know. And here I am. I'm thinking a couple of things. And I thought, man, this is going to be my coronation. This is going to be great. I went out and hired a very expensive PR firm that made a lot of big promises. And on paper and everything looked great. This was going to be amazing. And this is all going to go the way it's supposed to go. Part of that process was, 50 people that I knew that were like in my inner circle. I built these really expensive boxes. They were like, each box was like $175. They had a pre-copy of the book. They had a really cool gift, and they had this. It was a really cool package. And all it said was, hey man, on the book launch day, do me a favor, just make a social media post. Let's do that. Let's do the social media post. And just to try to get my book out in front of as many people as we could. And my goal, like I said, my vision board everywhere was US Today USA Today bestsellers list. That was the goal with everything. And as launch day was coming, I realized a lot of the stuff that was supposed to be happening with the PR firm was not happening, had not come to pass. It was not occurring. We spent all this stuff out. I was too far behind the 8 ball to pivot myself and to try to do something. And I knew the sales weren't going to be where I wanted them to be. I knew they were not, because the exposure just wasn't there. I knew it wasn't going to happen. It sent me, talk about getting squeezed. That's why I saw this. And I started getting squeezed. I felt myself getting into this. Oh man, the PR firm was a terrible decision. Oh man, these boxes were bad decision. All of stuff, like I made all these bad decisions, and it put me into the drift, man. I was drifting just like my book says, and it sent me reeling. And I was like, I got in this a little bit of analysis paralysis where I didn't want to make a decision. Like I lost one of my assistants. I let her go, and I hadn't hired a new one because I met with like 10 people, but I was so I was so scared to make another bad decision. I couldn't make one. And everything became just kind of putting it off. And that's when I saw that video about the orange. And I was like, holy crap, I got to start looking into this. And through looking into it, I realized a couple of things. Number one, well, let's break all that down. I was so mad at myself about the PR firm, about that decision, because it was very expensive. And I was very mad at myself. And this is important because the results weren't what they were. I was mad at myself because the results of a decision that I had made 8 months ago didn't come to fruition. You can't do that. You have to look at, did you make the best decision you could at the time with the information that you had? And I thought I did. I thought I really did. I did some due diligence. I really thought I made the best decision. So I got to let that one go. I got to let it go. And then when it comes to the 50 people, when I sent out those 50 boxes, like, these are people that I've done stuff like, masterminds, inner circle, blah, blah, and just maybe 10 of them did it and 40 of them didn't. And I was like, wow. And that stung. You're like, bro, I would have done this in a second for any one of these people. And here it is. And that's when I realized that I had miscategorized these people in my life. And I think this is something that led to a lot of disappointment, for a lot of people in life. I think you're disappointed in people because you miscategorize them. Mm-hmm. And you've got to look at, like, for example, how you categorize people. There's 3 categories, really. Category 1 would be your inner circle. This is who's going to call you. This is who you call if you want to move a body, right? Like, middle of the night. They love, not that you would do that, but they love you just for you, man. It has nothing to do with your status. It has nothing to do with anything you can provide them. It's just that. That's inner circle. And then there's middle circle, which are people that you're friends with, that, then you might work with them, you might do deals with them. You have some commonality. That's great. That's friendly. Those are pretty good people. And then there's people in the outer circle, which are your acquaintances. These are people who, for the most part, your relationship might be transactional. If something comes up, they're like, this might be good with this guy. I know him. You're going to call them, but that's kind of it. And the problem was I had miscategorized a lot of people on this list into the wrong category. And I had inner circle expectations of people that were maybe giving me outer circle indifference. Yeah. And that's just my fault for miscategorizing them. But then once I went back and I looked at that list and I just recategorized all of those people, it enabled me to kind of let that go. Mm-hmm. Much like my book, as I say, I'm living chapter 15 right now, is I don't need a PR firm to book. I mean, dude, we've been doing this podcast thing forever. I don't need a PR firm to book podcasts. I can do this forever I want. And the best thing about a book is it's a sprint, not a launch. I mean, it's a sprint, not a marathon. Sorry, it's a marathon, not a sprint, is what I meant to say. Mm-hmm. Yeah, my goal, and at the end of the day, it's like you look at this and you talk about what's the end result you're looking for. Was it to be on the USA Today's bestsellers list? Is that really the goal that I wanted? Or is it really to help as many people as I can in a way that I would want to be helped? And what I've realized through this is that really is the goal. And that's not something that has to be a sprint. That's a marathon. So right now, what I'm working on right now is escaping the drift that sent me there from this book launch that didn't go the way that I thought it was going to go. But now I'm taking action to put it back in the way it is. Mm-hmm. Businesses are great. My businesses run themselves. They do basically.
Mm-hmm. So Johnny, before we sign off, where can the listeners get a hold of you? They want to buy the book. They want to learn more about you. They want to buy a home in Vegas. Where can they find out more about you?
Yeah, so obviously anywhere, thejohngafford.com. My Instagram handle is @thejohngafford. That's the entrepreneur business card, as everybody knows. Everything's there. You can listen to my podcast, Escaping the Drift, same name as the book, and the book is available everywhere.
I would actually take the moment as you're listening to this to go look at Johnny G's website. It is a sweet website. It is simple, clean. You know exactly what's going on. I already showed my wife and kids. I'm like, this is what I want our website to look like. So kudos to you. I want to just say 3 words on here. As you're listening to this, if you're afraid of AI, if you do just these 3 things that John mentioned: relentless execution, radical accountability, and raising your standards. If you do those 3, AI ain't going to even come close to you. It can't compete with you. You will be so far ahead of everyone else. I'm going to say it again. Relentless execution. Just come up with the vision and just execute on what you're trying to accomplish. Being radically accountable. Yeah, I suck today. How am I going to be better tomorrow? Not many people can do that. And the third one is lifting your standards, getting into a room that has 18 people who are going to be on The Apprentice. And don't be afraid or don't be intimidated if you don't really belong there. Those are the rooms that you should be getting into, because one day you will belong there. And then that room is too not good enough for you, and you're going to continue to get into other rooms. That's really important. And I'm going to end it by saying something that really, really struck a chord with me. I want anyone listening to this right now and ask this question: shouldn't you be living your own book right now and not someone else's book? Focus on the book that you want to write about your life. And you may not have to write it metaphorically, but you should be living the book that you want, not the book that John is telling you to live or the book that I'm telling you to live, but focus and become clear on the book that you want to live. Any final words, Johnny G?
No, man, I appreciate you so much. It was such a joy when I had you on my show, and I'm glad we could finally circle back here.
Thanks, brother. I want to thank everyone for listening to the show today. My name is Gino Barbaro, one of the co-founders of Jake and Gino, and I will see you on next week's episode. Take care, everyone. Thanks, John.